Thank you for joining us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and relating to self-employment. Today we're going to talk about tax rebates. Before we do, if I could please ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll easily be able to refer back to this information if you need, as well as navigate to the other information on a whole wide range of topics that we have available to support you in your self-employment. So let's talk then about tax rebates. What does this mean and who will get a tax rebate? It's a common question that people ask. Am I due a tax rebate? I've heard of my friend, my family, somebody in the pub was talking about they got a tax rebate, and I'm wondering, will I get a tax rebate? So it seems an obvious thing to say, but the first thing that's important to note is in order to get a rebate of tax, you must have actually paid some tax in the first place. This is where a tax rebate arises, that for some reason or other, you've paid more tax to HMRC than you're actually liable for. So there's quite a few different situations that would lead to you have potentially being overpaid tax. And it doesn't necessarily mean that anything's been done wrong by you or anyone else in the chain. And there are some natural situations that arise where the tax is overpaid. So a common example of this is if you are a sole trader operating as a subcontractor within the construction industry, you will have had deducted a specific type of deduction called CIS tax. And that means that your contractor will have deducted around 20%. There are some differences, and we explore CIS in the different videos, so we won't go into that in detail now, but essentially just a set amount is deducted from your invoices and paid to your tax account on your behalf, and that may be more than the liability that's actually due when your tax return's done. So in this scenario, an overpayment of tax would arise and you would be due the repayment. And as we explore in other videos, you would receive this by submitting your self-assessment tax return. So another scenario for thinking specifically again for sole traders is the payment on account system. And again, we explore the actual payment on account system in other videos. But this in effect works on paying payments on account for the tax year that you're actually in based on the previous year's liability. So if you've made all your payments on account, but your actual liability is lower than the estimated, then again, you will have overpaid your tax and you can receive a refund of this, either submitting the request on your tax return, or if you've already submitted your tax return, a simple request to HMRC to reclaim that, or a request for your gateway account. And so another scenario then, thinking specifically of employees, with employees, of course, your tax is deducted at source by your employer. They pay your gross pay, but before they actually pay that to you in your bank, they make deductions for your tax, your national insurance, and also potentially pensions, and they pay you what's left. So there's several scenarios that could result in an overpayment and unfortunately also an underpayment of tax. One common difficulty in keeping the whole tax correct through the year is if you've had changes in employment throughout the year, if you've had gaps. So we refer to a pay period, either weekly or monthly, depending on how you're paid. if, for example, you're not working for some pay periods in the middle of the tax year, and your P45 isn't available for your next employer to pick up on, then that can result in issues with your tax. So at the end of the tax year, you should check that you have paid the correct tax. You can either do that by submitting a self-assessment tax return, or a simple call to HMRC to ask them to check. At some point they would identify that this was the case, but this can take a little while, and so it's better for you to know as soon as possible that your tax is all in order. And again, in a different video, we explore in more detail if you're changing jobs and how to check that your tax is correct. So another scenario would be for a high rate taxpayer. If you are a high rate taxpayer, there's certain scenarios that would increase the threshold that you start to pay the high rate tax, such as if you have made pension contributions from your personal funds. Now, when I say personal funds, I mean that hasn't been deducted from your wages. You used your own money in your bank account and physically moved that into a pension. The amount of the gross contributions would increase the threshold that you would start paying high rate tax at. If you have gift aided contributions to charities, so donated money to charity and ticked the gift aid box, that would have implications, as well as if you've job expenses, so things that you've paid for your employer and your employer hasn't reimbursed you for those. That may be sort of direct things for your employer. It could be mileage, although that doesn't include your general mileage to and from work. And it can also include things like subscriptions for organisations that are specifically required only for your employment. Any of those type of things, if you have any of those apply, then you should make sure that HMRC know. But again, if your tax code is adjusted after the end of the year, or you only identify after the end of the year that the HMRC weren't aware of these things, then again, make sure that you let them know. And this could result in an overpayment of tax throughout the year, which HMRC will refund to you without any problem. And again, in other videos, we look at specifically how to go about that and look at them in more detail. So hopefully this helps to explain what the long old question of will I get a tax rebate, and hopefully this gives you a little flavour. I'll say specifically, you first need to think of, have you paid any tax? Because if you've earned under the threshold and you haven't paid any tax, then of course there won't be any tax to refund to you. As I mentioned earlier, please do take the time to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can refer back to the information and also access the other information. If you want to be notified when we upload new information and new answers to questions, then you should also turn on the notifications. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you. Goodbye.